Hello everyone. So I wanted to talk about King Charles III and his legitimacy to rule England as its king. So the first thing to note is that he divorced Diana, Princess Diana, Lady Diana, and then remarried, and his second marriage was to a divorcee in Camilla Parker Bowles. Now, the first thing to note is that him being divorced can make him ineligible, but him marrying a divorcee certainly would make him ineligible. And in fact, that's what made Queen Elizabeth II's uncle, Edward, I believe it was, made him ineligible, was because he wanted to marry a divorcee. And so then his younger brother, I think it was George VI, became king instead, and then he died soon after becoming king, and then Elizabeth II became queen. She was only, 18 or 19 or something, quite young when she ascended to the throne. So, based on the old rule, there is no way that Charles would be becoming king. And in fact, Queen Elizabeth II deliberately changed the rules so that he could be. Because a lot of people said, well, we don't think he's legitimate. He is the eldest son, of course, and he's been the heir to the throne for his entire life. So the Queen Elizabeth II was queen already when she had her first child, when Charles was born. So if she died in childbirth, he would have become king as a baby infant. Of course, then in that case you have all sorts of situations where people are caretakers until the king reaches a certain age, but he would still have been king as an infant. So he's waited his entire life, and he's 73, and that's fairly close to the life expectancy of most people. He might only rule for 2 or 3 years. Men don't tend to live as long as women, and I mean, I'm not aware of any health issues that he has, but he might not live for that long. The other thing is, though, he cheated on Diana while he was married, and he did that with Camilla. Of course, he was with Camilla before he married Diana, and by all reports, he never actually stopped seeing her. He wanted to marry Camilla, but the Queen wouldn't let him, because she was too low a caste. So she wasn't too poor. She wasn't nobility, wasn't a lady or anything remotely like that. In fact, her closest claim to elevated status is that I think it's one of her grandmothers, or great-grandmothers perhaps, had an affair with a previous king. And that's about as far as it goes with her. So her claim to be Queen Consort, as they call it, or usually just shortened to merely Queen, is very slim. She certainly is not very well recognised as being a legitimate queen. Their marriage is pretty tenuous, and certainly had she been his first wife, and neither of them worried about Diana and whoever it was that Camilla married, his claim would have been a bit more legitimate, but it still wouldn't have been very legitimate because her caste is too low. She's not high enough up there. She's not a lady. She's not really even proper upper class. So you've got all that. So for all of that, and it's just generally, people don't like Charles. People hate Camilla, but they don't generally like Charles. He's made a few attempts to become more likeable, but people just don't like him. So there was a thought, therefore, that he could just abdicate and then go straight to his eldest son, William. But there is a problem there. Because William, yes, he's most definitely his mother's son, Diana, but because Diana had her own affairs, there is a doubt as to the paternity, as in who the father is, of both William and Harry. Now, a lot of people have commented that Harry has red hair, and therefore they've pointed to one of the men that Diana had an affair with who also had red hair. But there's also a question mark about William. It's not as big a question mark, but it certainly has to be raised. And So there is question marks over whether William should become king. So, you know, you shouldn't really be having a king who is only from Diana and not from Charles. So there is that. And then, so who would be the next legitimate one? Would actually be Andrew. Now, Andrew is Charles's the next one after him as far as brothers are concerned. Problem is, Andrew had he was divorced himself, and I believe he cheated while he was divorced, or was that his wife that cheated? Anyway, but he's also most tellingly had that friendship with Jeffrey Epstein, who of course was that celebrity pedophile. And so Andrew is not even a member of the royal family officially anymore, I don't believe. So it'd be difficult to, in times past, Andrew would have still had a stake, and with Elizabeth's passing, you probably would have had supporters of Charles, supporters of Andrew, and supporters of William. But there are actually others as well, because after Andrew comes Anne. Now, Anne is quite a popular royal figure. Now, she's the eldest female. And now you'd say, well, normally it goes the eldest male, not the eldest female. But with the previous one being a queen and Anne being so likeable, there is certainly a level of legitimacy to Anne becoming queen. Problem is that Anne's been divorced herself. She's on her second marriage. So if that's discounting Charles, then that should also discount her. And in fact, the only one that is not illegitimate as far as Charles's brothers and sisters and Charles himself is Edward, the youngest brother, or the youngest son. He's the only one that hasn't been divorced and isn't marrying a divorcee. So you would potentially have supporters of Charles. Andrew probably wouldn't get any support, so I'm going to forget about him. So Charles, Anne, Edward, and William. But you would also have Harry. Now, Harry, you'd think, oh, why is he getting support? He's obviously not Charles's son, and therefore is the wrong lineage. But he has a wife that's a bit power mad in Meghan Markle, and she's also has the support in some ways of USA. So you could potentially have that fifth one in her, that she would push him to vie for the throne, claim that he's the legitimate son and that William isn't. So you could potentially have 5-way war, even 6-way if Andrew does end up getting support, and then you could potentially have some other rival from within the lordships, or you might even have a foreign rival come in from another country, or from Wales or Scotland. And I've heard Wales and Scotland are trying to become independent at the moment, using the Queen's passing as sort of a way to become officially separate countries. A little bit complicated as to whether they are separate countries already. And the whole thing would be very unstable for the region if any of those things happened. So Charles becomes king, not because people want him, but because if we question it too much, then there's all this instability. And it's not a simple thing at all as to who would be the next one if he isn't. It might have been, if Andrew hadn't had that thing with Epstein, we would have just gone to Andrew, it wouldn't have been a problem. If Diana hadn't have had all those affairs, we would have just gone to William, it wouldn't have been a problem. But we know there's affairs, and we know about Epstein, and that makes it extra complicated. We can't go to the brother, we can't go to the son. So that's probably why people are just saying, okay, let's just have Charles. Charles probably isn't going to live that long. And then we'll go to William afterwards. William is quite a popular prince. Harry, not necessarily as popular, but he is popular in America. And there's a way why Harry would be good diplomatically, because making USA happy would make that, USA is England or UK's best ally right now. They're the strongest country in the world, so making them happy would be a good diplomatic move. Personally, I'd probably go for Edward, but then if you go for Edward, then you're going to make Meghan very unhappy. if you go for Charles, then at least Meghan has a chance of being Queen if something were to happen to William and perhaps his children as well. But yeah, if I was Charles, I'd just say, look, stuff you all, I'm going to be king, and that's it. And I think that's it, you know. Everyone's sort of thinking, well, Charles is the one that causes the less fights, the least instability. He's the one that they just stick with. And I guess that can be his motto, you may as well have me. And Charles for himself, if I was him, I would just keep a low profile. Maybe he could go back to writing children's books or presenting children's books. I seem to recall him doing something like that. And just go until he dies and not really do very much. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye bye.